Welcome to Around Space. I'm Kent Miller. Today we're going to be talking about music about kids in space. I'm delighted to have with us Jim Thorne, space scientist and singer-songwriter. In 1984, he got his bachelor's in astronautical engineering from Purdue and joined the Air Force as a second lieutenant. In 1996, he got his PhD in astronautical engineering from the Air Force Institute of Technology at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. And then in 2005, he retired as lieutenant colonel. Jim has been interested in music since he was a child. In 2014, he began writing songs. They're family-friendly and comedy songs. He's been approached by a talent agency from New York City. In 2016, he joined it's called the Recording Academy. That's the organization that sponsors the Grammy Awards. And in fact, he serves on one of the Grammy's committees for children's music here at the DC chapter. This year, in 2018, he has performed music at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. And also interesting, one of his songs has been playing on the University of Pennsylvania radio station in Philadelphia. The song's name is Mission to Europa, and it's in fact the JPL team called the Europa Clipper Mission. Apparently they've told him they like his song. So welcome back to this table.
Thank you very much, Ken.
All right. Now I understand you have a TV show in the works.
I'm hoping, yes, to do a television show right here on Fairfax Public Access.
Okay.
Starting as soon as I can, presumably early next year, to do a music-based program about space exploration and science for children, but not for little children so much as elementary science students. In particular, I would like for the show to help them with their standards of learning questions for the tests that they have to take in about 4th through 6th grade.
I see. So you find that music aids retention, is it memory?
Yes, my experience in schools so far has been that the length of a song can draw the attention of the child in a way that it's natural they want to hear the end of the story.
Sure.
And so it's almost too easy. The kids just love stuff about space. I've kept a log. I've managed to perform now for more than 4,000 children live in different schools and planetarium, museum, and so on. Mm-hmm. And they do. They grab right on to a story like that. They want to hear the song. And I've been studying about this. The human brain reacts in very interesting ways to music. Mm-hmm. We as human beings have a strong capacity to maintain a beat pattern in our brains. So even if the music turns off, we continue to hear that internally. That's something that is uniquely human. And I think that it's why music is such a good therapeutic tool for people who need to be going through therapy for speech and so on, but also to maintain attention, as we were saying, for an elementary student.
I see. I remember last time we spoke, you mentioned something, Virginia Standards of Learning.
Yes.
What content would that be, space-wise?
Planetary science.
Okay.
I believe it's the 6th grade, they have to know the order of the planets in both distance, but also in terms of size.
Okay.
And as I mentioned previously, one of the teachers at Greenbrier Elementary, a good friend of mine, had asked for a song about that as well as some other topics. So my album called A Race in Space, okay, where the title song was written to sound like a Beach Boys drag racing song. The two characters in that song, a boy named Tommy and a girl named Laura, go to the planets in the different order. And the benefit of this is that once the children not only pay attention to the song, but remember the lyrics because they've been set to a melody, which is another advantage of doing it that way, is that they can then remember that for the purpose of taking their standardized test. And I'm so pleased that I have received a bag full of thank you notes on colored paper with crayon, where they've said, "Oh, Dr. Thorne, thank you, I passed my test because of your song." It's a very heartwarming result, and I would like to extend that and reach even more children by using a television show if I can.
Wow, outstanding. What kind of topics? Normally when we do a show like this one, we have a theme or a topic that we organize around.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've managed to put together notes for about 8 to 10 topic areas. Okay. The first one that I would like to do, first chance I get, would be to do a 2-part show about Apollo and the history of it, and how it wasn't all just about the one flight of Apollo 11 in July of 1969. And of course, next year, July of 2019, will be the 50th anniversary of that. But leading up to that, there were several programs, years of work that was done. The Mercury capsules were the first that we did to achieve orbit for American astronauts anyway, and they held a single astronaut. Then Gemini, which means the twins, held 2 astronauts. Yeah. And they learned how to rendezvous spacecraft in orbit, which was an important component later for the Apollo program. And then the Apollo capsules held 3 astronauts, and so there's a natural progression in that way. I would love to go to the National Air and Space Museum of the Smithsonian and have some on-location video of the different capsules and stand there and explain how they worked and see how many seats were inside of each one and that sort of thing.
Well, that sounds like good fun. Now, you've mentioned you've been in some early morning presentations. I think at the Smithsonian, it opens at 10,
yes.
But it's possible to organize something in the hour before, right?
Yes. I believe it's just perhaps a few times a year. They have a program called Morning at the museum.
Okay.
And it is meant for children that are on the autism spectrum, which was a new thing for me. Earlier this year, I got to do that one time. Pardon me. And it was quite a heartwarming moment to work with these children. There was a play mat that had been set out on the floor that looked like the surface of the moon. It was
That's fun.
It was drawn up that way, and they had plastic moon rocks and baskets, and the children were encouraged to use tools that they could use to pick up, like a prospector, to pick up the rock and put it into the basket. This was set up right beside where they have an actual moon rock under a lucite panel, where they encourage anyone to come up and you can touch an actual moon rock that was brought back by Apollo. It looks like a piece of obsidian.
Right,
In any case, I have a song called To Follow Apollo, about my kid characters going back to the moon someday to find the various landing sites, and to complete the mission by going to the 3 more sites that Apollo did not complete because it was terminated early. So anyway, I'm singing this song for these children, and there was one couple who brought up a girl in a wheelchair who appeared to be nonverbal. And when I started to play the song, she smiled and brightened up, and the parents were very pleased. And she leaned out of her wheelchair and used one of the tools to pick up a rock, and it made the parents extremely happy. It was just a warm moment to get there and play for her. And then later, a friend of mine told me, who has worked with children on the spectrum, that just because she wasn't speaking does not mean that she couldn't necessarily process the words. So it could be that she understood the song but didn't have the ability to emote about it.
Right.
In any case, I'm learning as I go, but I hope to do that again. They have me scheduled for this September to do another Morning at the Museum program.
Okay, great. I love it. You mentioned something about, I remember, one of your topics was about orbits.
Yes.
And I understand there's a mathematical angle to this.
Yes, it's the simple idea of continuity.
Okay.
If we assume a continuous function.
Okay.
All right.
Meaning no jumps or gaps.
Exactly. No.
Okay.
Right. A smooth change. And so, an interesting talk that I like to give the children when I go to visit the schools and so on is that if one looks at an orbit that's near the Earth, or a so-called low Earth orbit, a LEO orbit, typically a period for that is around 90 minutes.
Okay.
That's what the International Space Station is doing, approximately 90-some minute orbit.
Right.
Okay, so suppose you have the Earth in a 90-minute orbit, but the Moon is 250,000 miles away almost, and it takes about 28 days to go around.
Right.
If one were to create a series of increasingly larger circular orbits, they would each have a period that would gradually increase in a continuous way, right? So that one could then assume that somewhere between 90 minutes and 28 days, there should be one size of an orbit that has a period of exactly 24 hours. Based on continuity. And that is what a geosynchronous orbit is.
I see. So our television satellites, our communication satellites, they're at that distance.
It was very popular. The geo belt, as they call it, is a very popular place. And there are limits on how close two satellites can be and still be functional. So they have to be a certain number of degrees apart in order for their communications not to interfere with each other.
As due to the antenna design. I think the beam width is the issue there.
Right. There is some width to it such that they can only be so close.
I see. Otherwise, you might pick up 2 or more satellites with your dish.
Yes.
Get garble the signal.
Yes.
I see. All righty. Tell me a little bit about on-location filming. You're now in the process of learning how to do your own shows, right?
Yes, I'm so pleased today. I got my first badge as being a member of Fairfax Public Access. I'm happy to be part of the family, and so I'm signed up to take my first course, which is studio camera, and then there are a series of other things that I have to do beyond that. My understanding is that one needs to be certified, or at least checked out as a producer before one can do a show. And that's my goal, is to do that and use practical effects in the studio, much like Mr. Rogers did. I'm not going to try to imitate Mr. Rogers, but what I want to do is take the respect that he had for the children and the fact that he never spoke down to them. Right. I want to use that because that's the way I try to treat the children when I go visit schools. At the same time, I'm a huge fan of Carl Sagan and the Cosmos series.
Yes.
And so I'd like to introduce some more advanced concepts such as the one I just described about continuity and arrive somewhere in between, but to base it all on music, because I have 15 songs between my 2 albums that have a series of concepts in them, and I want to use those and explain them, but make the show really focused on the music as, again, a teaching tool with my introductions around that. And as for on-location shooting, sure, anything that I could do. The Air and Space Museum has been very forthcoming with me offering to help with that sort of thing. They're quite interested in a television show.
Okay. I think, personally, I think on-location shooting is difficult.
Okay, all right, yes. Yes.
Well, things like sound and lighting are the main issues.
Of course.
They're easy to control in a studio, but harder to do on location. Well, so that's great.
I look forward to the challenge.
Yeah. You say you have 2 CDs, is that right?
That's right.
Right. Tell me how you go from writing songs to actually publishing CDs.
Oh, that's a tricky business.
Yeah.
There is a very formal business side to music, and I belong to an organization called the Children's Music Network, and then, as you mentioned, I also belong to the Recording Academy, where I'm on the Grammys committee for the DC chapter for children's music. One has to register everything. If you've written songs, they need to be copyrighted. The safest thing to do is to use the Government Copyright Office.
Yes.
But I'm also a member of ASCAP, which is a union for songwriters, and so all the songs that I have are registered in that way too, such that if they're streamed online through YouTube, Spotify, whatnot, there's an accounting for that.
Okay.
And you have to have the right kind of UPC symbol. I learned I had the wrong kind on my first CD. There's a kind for books and there's a kind for music and so on. And Barnes & Noble wanted to carry my CD, which was quite gratifying. In fact, that's how I got into the Recording Academy, is because you have to show some market penetration.
All right.
So there are many details to keep track of there.
Yeah, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. The first album is called To Follow Apollo,
okay,
and the second one is called A Race in Space, and they're both available online.
Okay. All right, so you could actually order them online then.
Yes, one could. The label that carries them is called CD Baby, which has been around actually quite a long time.
Uh-huh. So, and I think some of the individual songs have actually been posted on YouTube, is that right?
Yes.
With the slideshow.
I've gone to the trouble to create slideshows using PowerPoint. That's all those years in the Air Force. coming to fruition.
Oh dear.
Learning how to do staffing and charts and so on. And they're wonderful drawing tools. So I've created still slides with the words so that the children can sing along. And again, to help imprint the scientific ideas, gentle as they are, in the songs.
You mentioned, let's say, you mentioned orbits, and you mentioned the history of Apollo. What were some of the other topics you're thinking of doing?
Oh yes, I would like to talk about Europa, the moon of Jupiter that you had mentioned. I have a song about that in the Europa Clipper mission. But earlier, as I've mentioned previously, I was an exchange scientist at the Jet Propulsion Lab working on the Jupiter Icy Moons Orbiter project before it was canceled.
Yeah.
But one of its targets was Europa as well. So I'd like to dedicate at least one show to that. I would also like to talk about the history, broader history of space, to include some astronaut names, again, because my friend, the teacher, had asked to impart some history information to the children, because that's also part of their learning process. The ecology of the world, I had a song that I did here last time called How Green is the World, where I was using satellites, how people use satellites in order to monitor the entire world at the same time. So that's another topic I would like to do.
The weather and the sea state and our crop yields and things like that.
Yes.
They're all monitored.
Size of the ice caps, amount of algae in the ocean, the extent of deserts, silt plumes from a river delta, all those things we see from space.
Wow, and including I guess the temperature of the Earth as well is measurable.
In indirect ways like that, although there is certainly an infrared signature from the Earth. Another thing is planetary defense. I have one song it's called The Space Rock, and it's about how we don't want what happened to the dinosaurs to happen to us. You know? So my characters, Tommy and Laura, go out and they find an asteroid that's going to hit the Earth someday, and they spray paint it so that it's more reflective, which perturbs the orbit over time.
I see. So, because we know there are what we call near-Earth asteroids,
yes,
right, or near-Earth objects.
Yes, yeah, the Earth crossing.
Right, and they can cross the orbit of the Earth, and it's only a matter of time before they smack.
That's true, but before we frighten anyone, the odds of that are extremely small and very, very infrequent, but it certainly has happened before, yes.
Millions of years apart between collisions.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So anyway, let's see. Oh, my goodness. Now, you're going to present a song today.
Yes, yes. I would like to do a song called The Stars Go By, and that's the first one that I wrote when I was asked to try that by that talent agent that had contacted me from New York City in 2014. I had been writing songs for many years prior to that. I had just never written any for children, and he had asked me to write 3 songs. I tried 3, and one was about space, and that was the one. That's the first track on my first album, and I would like to use a shorter version of that as my theme song for my new television show, assuming all works out and I get to do that here at FPA.
I see. So you play that at the beginning of each show and then again at the end of each show during their credit roll.
That's exactly what I would like to do with it. It's called The Stars Go By.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What kind of, you say there's educational content. What kind of, what do we learn about stars?
In The Stars Go By, it's, in that song, I talk about how we send robots first to explore at the planets, and then presumably we will send people later. It talks about how the sun emits solar wind, and that's why we see aurora on the Earth, but we also see them on other planets. I mentioned that some planets are covered with perhaps a yellow or a red atmosphere, such as Mars has, but others have no solid ground, specifically because they're gas giants. It's sort of
Jupiter.
Jupiter is in particular, right? And so it's sort of an overview, and it introduces the names of my 2 characters, Tommy and Laura. So that's what I would like to accomplish with that particular song.
This is interesting because if I remember, both Jupiter and Saturn, we've seen enormous auroras near the poles.
That's right. Yes.
And in fact, they radiate in the ultraviolet.
Yes. Yes. Cassini took some wonderful pictures of the South Pole of Saturn, if I'm getting that correctly, and I think it was well, Juno now is taking wonderful shots of Jupiter's poles because of the orbit that it's in, and there's this ring-shaped curtain around the North Pole of Jupiter that's just fabulous. The pictures are extraordinary.
Extraordinary aurora.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you imagine how big that actually is, given the size of the planet.
Yeah. So the aurora itself is bigger than Earth.
Oh, no doubt. There's no doubt. Yeah.
Good fun. Alrighty. So let's see. Is there any way I should set this song up for you?
Just that to say that this is what I would like to use as a theme song for my new show whenever it comes along.
Okay.
Could the kids of the future go into space? If they did, could they find new worlds? Could they catch a meteor? Or maybe find a space pomegranate and bring it home? Let's find out as the stars go by.
Once we went into space to be part of a race so that people could walk on the moon. Many years have gone by, but again we will fly and return to the sky sometime soon. Can a girl fly through space to a planet? Could she pilot her spaceship and land it? Could she fly through the sky as the stars go by and bring home a space pomegranate? Many robots have flown to the greatest unknown and explored all the worlds of our sun. They have learned many things and gone through Saturn's rings, but there's so much that they haven't done. Can a boy fly through space in a rocket? Could he learn how to steer and to dock it? Could he fly through the sky as the stars go by and keep meteors in his pocket? You could learn to fly as the stars go by and reach for the endless sky. When the sun starts to sigh, many atoms will fly to be caught by the earth and remain. Glowing curtains of light will extend out of sight, painting colors that fall like the rain. Can the kids of the earth catch auroras? Could they have names like Tommy or Laura? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and hold northern lights in fedoras? You could learn to fly as the stars go by and reach for the endless sky. There's a world that's nearby with a red-colored sky and some others with ice all around. Some are big balls of gas where you'll never see grass since they don't really have any ground. Can the kids of the earth reach the heavens? Could they answer the biggest of questions? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and reach for new worlds as they beckon? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and reach for new worlds as they beckon?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And,
oh, thank you. My pleasure.
I really wish you all the best on your show.
I appreciate it.
It's a lot of work, you know.
Yes, I understand.
All right. Thank you very much. All right.